Now that is more of what we want to see from young Fabian Lysell.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Wednesday, September 25th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And before we get started, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. And you can find me, my Hockey Thoughts Dad Jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. The Bruins, winners last night in a preseason matchup against the Washington Capitals. And as we do this season, after games, we're going to break it down, looking at the key storylines, stats, and signals to take away moving forward. The big storyline last night was the play of Fabian Lysell, and he, let's say, underwhelmed to say the least in the preseason opener against the New York Rangers, failing to land a shot on goal. Head coach Jim Montgomery said after Tuesday's morning skate that Lysell needed to do a little more than he's done if he wants to make the Bruins. But in fairness, that would be the case for most people that played in the preseason opener. And let's be fair here. Lysell is a 21-year-old winger who has a huge opportunity here to crack the opening night roster. He is coming off a concussion, and again, he's still quite young. So there's some nerves, there's some pressure there, some rust that he needed to shake off before he can really make an impact. And that's exactly what he did in last night's tilt. He's yet to play a regular season game in the NHL, but expectations are still high. He's got high offensive upside and could be a legitimate middle six winger for this team. And that would be very welcome considering the departures of Jake DeBrusk and Danton Heinen, as well as James Van Riemsdyk in the offseason. Now, Lysell said after Tuesday's game that he didn't know about Montgomery's comments, but he definitely played like he had received that message. And in the second period, after drawing a penalty, he made good on the power play opportunity by just unleashing a wicked wrist shot from the left circle that sailed past Washington Capitals goalie Hunter Shepard to give the Bruins a 2-0 lead at the time. And that's the kind of shot that keeps you up at the NHL level. It was a high-end level shot from the faceoff circle, very Pasta-esque, very reminiscent of Alex Ovechkin, who was not in the lineup last night for the Washington Capitals, but showed some growth. And the fact that he was able to draw the penalty and make good on that very power play opportunity really endeared himself to Bruins fans, to the coaching staff. And it wasn't only that. Jim Montgomery said that they were really happy with his growth from game 1 to game 2. He was determined on pucks. He was determined in trying to get shots on net, making plays offensively and tracking back defensively, which of course we all know is important to the Bruins. Overall, a very good game for him. Lysell certainly has the skating talent and the offensive creativity to play at the NHL level, but he is prone to getting knocked off pucks or to trying to do it all himself. Maybe not the strongest player in his own zone as well, but he played very well on Tuesday, and he said it's a lot of fun competing for a roster spot. That's how he has to see it. He said maybe he felt a little bit more pressure coming into the preseason, knowing the opportunity that's ahead of him, but coming in with a bit of a different mindset definitely helps just playing your game out there. There are, of course, 5 preseason games left on the schedule, and once we get deeper into that schedule, we know that more and more vets will come into the lineup and we'll get more of a concept of the opening night roster. Lysell, Georgii Merkulov, others getting a chance to impress here early in the preseason, and that was a step in the right direction, certainly for Lysell. Merkulov also had a much better game than his preseason opener. He has another assist, so 2 points in 2 preseason games, and we'll talk about this a bit later, but there is a lot of competition here for some of these depth forward spots, and both of those guys may have been written off a bit after the opener, but certainly played their way back into contention. The other key storyline from last night's game was in net, and it was the debut of Joonas Korpisalo for the Boston Bruins. He only faced, I think, like 7 shots, but he stopped all 7 of the pucks that came his way, including a couple high danger chances, and his positioning was good, really showing the promise of the experienced, savvy veteran who has played well at the NHL level in the past. Obviously, a incredibly small sample size, but without Jeremy Swayman around, it's important for Korpisalo to impress early on, to look solid. Jim Montgomery said he thought Korpisalo was really good. He made 4 difficult saves look real easy, and you can tell that he's composed. He's big in the net. Washington had a lot of opportunities they missed the net on because he's taking away the angle. The shooters are trying to be perfect. They missed the net. It's a small thing that good goalies do. It matters. Montgomery added that he had a strong first outing. No matter what your last season was, you want to start on a good foot. We all know Jim Montgomery is huge on staying in the present and just focusing on what you can do in the moment. Korpisalo took that moment and made good on that start. 7 for 7 in terms of shots, saves. Pretty confident young man, Montgomery called him, and he knows how good he is. He's had a lot of success in Columbus. Can't forget what he did in LA when he got traded at the 2023 deadline. So without Jeremy Swayman around, Korpisalo is being called upon to step up. He's presumably your opening night starter if Jeremy Swayman has not yet signed. If Swayman does sign, then there's some questions about whether or not you send Korpisalo to the AHL, send him through waivers, risk losing him, or you send Bussy, risk losing him. Much younger, more upside perhaps. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, hopefully, when Jeremy Swayman signs. But for the time being, very good signs from Korpisalo here in his Bruins debut. Credit again to goalie coach Bob Essensa, who has that Midas touch when it comes to goaltenders and getting the best out of them in the Bruins system. And hopefully that continues here into the regular season. What are some other key stats that we need to look at from last night's game? We'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. Hey, all you NFL fans out there, you can start the new season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You can look at options per game or look at some futures for the Boston Bruins, put some money down on the over-under, which FanDuel has set at 97.5. $5 down on that will get you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. You don't have to hit on that bet to get the $200 bonus. So if you get a hunch during the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. What are some other key stats that we need to look at when it comes to last night's game? Well, we have the goal scorers. Riley Tufte opened the scoring for the Boston Bruins on an interesting play where the Capitals goaltender kind of trapped the puck in his glove and then, for whatever reason, swiped his glove downwards and basically beat himself 5-hole. Preseason goaltending can be quite an adventure. So Tufte continues to impress. He had almost 18 minutes of ice time to lead all forwards. Had some power play time. He was, of course, one of the free agents signed on July 1st, down the list in terms of importance, seemingly behind Elias Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov, even Max Jones, who's out with an injury. I should mention Lindholm also hasn't made his Bruins debut as he is day-to-day with an injury. Not super great news to begin the season, but hopefully it's just something minor and he will make his preseason debut later on with the view to coming out hot on opening night. Another guy who scored is Justin Brazeau. He is in the mix, of course, for, if you look at the right side for the Boston Bruins, you have David Pastrnak penciled in up top. You have probably Mark Kostelik on the fourth line, but then you have two open spots that, depending on where Matt Poitras fits in terms of playing center or wing, you could have Lysell, Brazeau, Poitras all in line to take one of those spots. And not to mention Tyler Johnson, who is there on a PTO. He had an assist last night for the Bruins. He had a block, no shots on goal, but he did get 3 minutes and 43 seconds of power play time. Again, early on, looked a little sloppy, but we can give him a pass because it's his first game playing with the Boston Bruins in a whole new system, etc. The other goal scorer was Patrick Brown. Not a guy that I would like to see on the big roster. I expect him to be sent down, maybe get a spot start here and there for the Bruins. But those were the goal scorers. Those are the guys that impressed last night. Tufte, Lysell, Brazeau, and Patrick Brown. In terms of overall ice time, Hampus Lindholm led the way with 20 minutes and 39 seconds. He, along with Brandon Carlo, I thought Billy Sweezy in his 18 minutes and 32 seconds looked impressive once again. You had Ian Mitchell, Sweezy, and Jordan Osterley. All those three guys are competing with Parker Witherspoon for the seventh man on defense. All three of those guys likely to be in the AHL, but Mitchell and Osterley both had assists and keeping themselves in the mix there when it comes to consideration for that seventh man. Another key stat to look at, you had Korpisalo going perfect, 7 for 7. Michael DiPietro was a bit busier in net. He faced 15 shots and he made 13 saves, so allowing 2 goals on 15 shots. That's an .867 save percentage. Not extraordinary. Again, these stats are inflated because he's only playing half a game. If you give him a full 60 minutes and you only allow 2 goals, obviously the save percentage improves. It's kind of, a difficult spot to bring a guy in cold in the middle of a game, whereas Korpisalo has the full warm-up and goes right in there to begin. So I'd be interested to see how DiPietro performs getting the start instead of coming in halfway through the game. Bussy got the start in the first preseason game. Korpisalo got the start here. Perhaps DiPietro gets the start in tomorrow night's game. So we'll have to keep an eye on the goaltending situation there. But again, DiPietro should still be in the mix here when it comes to Maybe not starting the year with the Bruins, but in the absence of Swayman being the next man up. If Bussy and or Korpisalo begins to falter here. The shot leader was Patrick Brown. He had 3 shots on goal last night for the Boston Bruins. Lysell had the 1 goal on 2 shots. He had 3 takeaways to go along with 2 giveaways, so a positive there in terms of puck control and possession. The Bruins overall in this one had the advantage in shots as well. The Bruins, actually, no, they did not. It was 19 shots in favor of the Bruins and 26 shots in favor of the Capitals. They really turned it on later on in the game. Score effects coming into play here. 22-19 were the shots in favor of the Capitals. Hits were 18-15 in favor of the Bruins. Faceoffs is another area that we're focusing on this year. We know it was a bit of a weak spot for the Bruins last season. For the second game in a row, the Bruins had the advantage. 53.2% of the faceoffs were won by the Boston Bruins. And the guys who were most proficient in this area, Tyler Johnson actually stepped in and won 4 of his 6 faceoffs. Matt Poitras won 4 of 5 faceoffs. Poitras a guy that we'll talk about here coming up as one of the signals moving forward. But for a guy who played mostly on the wing last night, he did step in and win 80% of his faceoffs to lead the team in that stat. But you can't sleep on Johnson's versatility there. It was something that Andy Brickley mentioned during the broadcast. Yes, he's on a PTO, but the fact that he can play wing, he can play center, stepped in, won 66.7% of his faceoffs last night. You can't sleep on that either. Brett Harrison had 1 assist last night. He went 0 for 1 in the faceoff circle as a more natural center. Other guys who got on the board were Johnson with the assist, Merkulov with an assist, and on the back end you had Michael Callahan, Ian Mitchell, and Jordan Osterley with assists as well. Now, once the regular season begins, we'll get more detailed stats in terms of puck possession and the more underlying stats. For the preseason, points matter. Goals certainly matter. Lysell's shot last night was the standout play for me. What a beautiful NHL level wrist shot that he threw on net, and that finally went in. So that was, to me, the most encouraging part. What can we glean from all this? Well, we'll talk about some signals and trends from last night's game to keep an eye on moving forward. If you're looking to hire, there's no better place to turn than Indeed. When it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. It's to match. And you can do that most effectively with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. They don't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. So wins and losses don't really matter in the preseason. Stats, individual stats kind of do. And we can take some trends as signals away from last night's game moving forward. I mentioned earlier the battle for some depth forward positions. Let's just lock in the line of Pavel Zacha, Elias Lindholm, David Pastrnak up top. And we can also lock in Brad Marchand and Charlie Coyle on the second line, and Trent Frederic, Morgan Geekie on the third line. But there's some real competition there for those two right wing spots. And I thought Matt Poitras, who got the start on the wing last night, looked so solid. Poised, crafty, with and without the puck. He was skating on a line with Trent Frederic and Brett Harrison. And look, long term, he projects as a center. The more I watch him, the more he reminds me of a young David Krejci out there. But shifting him to the wing allows him to keep his game a bit more simple, while also allowing him to display his playmaking capabilities down low. The way he can gather the puck and work it along the boards, losing the defenseman and distributing the puck is a high end. And he could make a very strong case for playing on that line with Coyle and Marchand. Of course, Lysell asserted himself last night as a serious candidate. Justin Brazeau with the goal, his net front presence, big body there, is worthy of consideration. Merkulov as a left-hand shot. It's difficult to see him cracking the open night roster despite his improvements there. But then you have Tyler Johnson as well, who can play center, who has that versatility on the right wing, and who Don Sweeney would like to find space for. His skating, still very strong, very detail-oriented player. He screened Shepard on Lysell's goal. He also fed Merkulov the puck that led to Brazeau's goal. He's a real Swiss Army knife when it comes to Boston's forward core, very reminiscent of what Danton Heinen brought to the table last season on a PTO. This situation might not be resolved before the start of the regular season. Don't forget, Heinen went into last season without a contract, but I really think Johnson will be a part of this team moving forward. But where does he fit in? If you pencil in Max Jones, John Beecher, Mark Kastelic on the fourth line, you have that's 10 forwards pretty much set, with 3, maybe 4 competing for a couple extra spots on the roster as your extra men. Poitras, I think, deserves to be in the lineup every night. Brazeau has showed that he should be there. You have Johnson, you have Lysell. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on moving forward. But all 4 of those guys played pretty well last night, with Merkulov, I think, being the odd man out because of his left-handedness and the fact that, the spots that are open right now are more at center and the right side, where you have Poitras, Johnson, who can play both, and Brazeau and Lysell as very talented, gifted scorers in their own right, competing for those spots. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on as we continue through the preseason schedule, which continues tomorrow night, where they will play their first road preseason game against the Philadelphia Flyers, I believe. And that should be a good one to keep an eye on as well. They'll be playing the New York Rangers tomorrow night, Philadelphia on Saturday. So their second look at the Rangers this week. And a lot of guys competing for spots on that team. They had an impressive showing last night, coming back against the New York Islanders. I believe they were down 4-1 at one point, came back and won 6-4. The Rangers, for me, one of the serious contenders in the Eastern Conference. And, they lost to the Panthers in the Eastern Conference Finals. I expect them to, try to make good on this window that they have open with some veterans, some younger players, certainly a team to watch. Now, tomorrow on the podcast, we're going to have a very special guest. I don't want to spoil it, but you're going to want to check this one out. I will tease it's a former Bruin and from one of my favorite all-time Bruins rosters from the past. So you're going to want to check that out for sure. And then on Friday, I'm planning to have Mike Amato on from Dauber Hockey, a former score colleague of mine, and he's going to talk about some Bruins fantasy hockey options, as well as some sleepers from around the NHL. So that's what's coming up the rest of the week here on Locked On Boston Bruins. Don't forget to check out the Locked On NHL podcast next. All the latest from around the league, from our local experts. Also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. I hope you're all doing well, friends. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe if you have not already on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you here again on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins. Thoughts?